Hi everybody, I hope you're all keeping well. It's Linda Culleton here. I Hello everybody, hope you're all keeping well. I'm just checking that line and I'm live. Just a second, just takes a few minutes to make sure everything is set up. Okay, so if you're not live on this call, that's fine. It's going to be available there so you can watch it anytime. So the topic of my chat today is, can you really become free from OCD? And this is a question I get asked a lot. It's definitely something I've had previously when I did experience OCD. An ever-ending journey of can you actually become free from OCD? So a lot of you on the page may have had therapy before. I'm not sure in what form. It could have been, the main kind of, you might say, known therapies for OCD is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, maybe ERP, and potentially medication. So I feel like, yes, while they all have a part to play, I'm going to talk about really the aspect of, can we really become free from OCD? Obviously, medication has its place in terms of if you need it as a short term, it's not a solution. As a short term, you might say stepping stone to getting that treatment that you need while being on the medication. Ultimately, when we think about OCD, from my experience of having OCD, from my experience of working with hundreds of people, um, the understanding is that all obsessive compulsive behaviours are coming from ingrained fears we have in our part of our mind called our subconscious mind. And this is the power of the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind stores all our fears, all our emotions. Really, our emotional world is our subconscious mind. And a lot of these fears are established at a very young age. So, childhood, and really it's when we have high emotional impact at childhood. So something that we deemed as being frightening, maybe it was trauma, maybe it was the death of a loved one. It's very relative, it's very specific obviously to the person. So I'm not going to give a one fits all. But what happens then is a lot of these fears are really dormant. They're not activated until we are in potentially a stressful situation. We go through some sort of a trauma in our adult life. Um, when we have an emotional overload in our adult life, when we feel like that, ultimately, you might say a trigger. And this trigger is really like, imagine we have a door of a house that's been closed for years and years and years. And in that house, in that room, is a lot of our fears, a lot of our high emotional fears. And what we do then is, what happens then is that these fears start coming up, and but they come up so fast, so strong that they lead into having intrusive thoughts. And then obviously, what do intrusive thoughts lead to? Well, they make you feel really, really frightened, shame, guilt, embarrassment, feeling bad would be definitely one. Unable to cope, anxiety, and really very distressed feelings and terrified of these thoughts. What does that lead to then? That leads to compulsions. So compulsions are really self-soothing. They're not something you do to you're not they're not something you consciously do. They're unconscious. So they are done to soothe the self, even though they are destructive. In other words, I end up checking something and maybe I start checking it once a day, but now I'm checking it like 10 times or 20 times a day. So destructive, meaning that it's debilitating to our life. So we're spending hours doing checks. We're mentally checking, we're mentally ruminating. So these are all patterns of behaviour in order to bring us back to a safe place in our mind, a safe, stable place. But ultimately, what they're doing is they're feeding more of these obtrusive thoughts and they're creating this coping mechanism. It's kind of like, it's just a behaviour. But ultimately, when we look at the therapies that maybe you have done in the past, like CBT, ERP, what you're doing there is we're looking at the conscious level of what's going on. And we're kind of, you might say, challenging these thoughts. We're doing certain behaviours to expose ourselves to certain situations, to expose ourselves to things that we ultimately fear, ingrained from the subconscious. Now, the subconscious is the part of the mind that controls 95% of our life, of our behaviour, of our actions, and our emotions. And the conscious part controls 5%. So when we try to change anything on a conscious level, yes, it's great to have understanding. It's very important to understand. That's a conscious understanding, the reasoning. It's very, very important to understand and to understand why you're doing these certain things. Because if we don't know, it's awareness, and awareness is key to going, oh, that's why I'm doing this. It makes it more impactful then to potentially get further help when we understand why we're doing something and maybe how painful it is, what's created in our life. So, but ultimately, we can know why we do certain things. So I can know, okay, I compulsively check something 20 times a day, but knowing it doesn't change it. So the subconscious mind is the emotional mind, and it's driving our behaviour. All emotions drive our behaviour. So my subconscious mind holds certain fears, threats, highly emotional impact situations. Well, my subconscious mind is storing them, and it's designed to keep me safe. So all it's doing is it's looking out for me ultimately, and all it's doing is trying to keep me safe, but in a way that's destructive to my life now. Because I don't need to hold on to these fears. They're not fear anymore. And in fact, maybe they were never a fear. Maybe it was created. When we're younger, we can create all these fears. Doesn't mean they're true. They would have been true at the time, potentially, but they weren't given the time and space to be emotionally processed. And therefore, they become stuck. They become stuck, and this is where all these obsessional, intrusive thoughts come from. So ultimately then what we do is the subconscious mind, it's one thing knowing something on a conscious level, i.e. 5%, and it's another thing changing it, and that's a subconscious. That controls 95% of your life. So in my experience from doing the talk therapy, I think everything has a place. I'm just giving my own experience and my experience with clients. Everything has a place. But we need something deeper. We need both. We need something to really change these patterns in our subconscious mind. We need something to say, okay, we don't need to hold on to this fear anymore. In fact, that fear was never true. And in fact, we can let that go now. Once we can do that, i.e. what happens is that the intrusive thoughts are no longer needed because there is no longer a fear there. Now that's like saying like it's very easy to do. And, you know, it is a journey, obviously. But that's the step that's needed to take in order to become free from OCD. And I'm not talking about managing OCD. We're talking about free from it. So basically how we do that is we're going to go to the subconscious mind, the part of the mind that stores these fears, worries, and all these, you might say, inaccurate programming. This was all established from childhood, younger life, of when you would have created all these kind of responses. What was in your environment, what you were exposed to, what you believed about yourself, what you had to do in order to be loved or feel like you weren't loved, etc., etc. So this is not one specific thing to everybody. This is there's not, everyone went through different things. Okay, I'm just giving a general overview. So what do we do then? What is needed to release fears that we have from our past so that we're no longer living them 20 years later, 10 years later? A lot of clients that I see would have done CBT, would have done ERP. And it's fantastic, yes, to know, okay, I'm afraid of every time I see a knife, I'm having an intrusive thought. So what do we generally do? We avoid that. Maybe we avoid being around knives. We have anxiety when we're around them. We have more intrusive thoughts. Ultimately, though, when you're in that state, you want to run. Your survival mechanism kicks in and you're just terrified. So you want to run, or if you're in a place you can't run, you feel like you're going to have a panic attack, or you feel so overwhelmed. So how do we really how do we go to the subconscious mind? How do we really, you might say, rebalance the subconscious mind? How do we let the subconscious know that we don't need to hold these fears anymore, that actually these fears are not true, and I can let them go? Let them go is a word that I don't mean just we can consciously let them go. So we can't just say, oh, it's just a fear, I let that go. That's not true now. That doesn't happen like that, because the subconscious mind believes it is true. And the subconscious mind doesn't work in terms of time. So even if something I was afraid of when I was 5, just because I'm such a bit in age, 30 years later, it doesn't distinguish between I was 5, so I can let that go. That's not true now. No, it still thinks it's true, regardless of time. So how do we do this? And this is the power of activating, you might say, resetting the nervous system. So the subconscious mind controls our behavior, our emotion, our heart rate, our organs, our, you might say, our hormonal activations, i.e. cortisol, adrenaline, and all the hormone glandular system. Okay, so if I hold something fear from my past in my subconscious, it's going to alert. It's going to be really kind of the messenger. Danger, danger, danger. And what feeling do you feel when you feel threat? You feel anxious. You feel on high alert. You feel overwhelmed. You feel like you have to run. You feel like you have to avoid. You feel like panicked. That is the driver. That is the driver. Okay, and this is the thing we need to change. That is driven from our nervous system. So our nervous system produces the flight, fight and freeze, which you may have heard of before, the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. If there's a message there of fear, and I'm in a situation, my brain is constantly scanning for threats. Okay, so I might be in a really nice place, could be in a beautiful place, but my mind is always scanning for threats. And if it senses something that it perceives as a threat based on past experiences, what's it going to do? It's going to alert me of threat. Now, I'm not going to be consciously alert. I'll just know by how will I feel. I'll feel anxious. I'll feel panicked. I'll feel worried. I'll try to run away. I'll try to ruminate. I'll try to figure all that out, and I go into this state of panic, you might say. So how do we change this? How do we kind of, you might say, interrupt the messages, tell the nervous system it's okay. You don't need to alert me anymore. This isn't a threat anymore. It's safe where I am. I'm completely safe. And we do this by resetting the nervous system. We do this by resetting this overloaded flight and fight response. And when we do that, we are signal back. We're just alerting the subconscious that stores the fear. It's no longer needed to keep it. It's no longer, because it's not being triggered, i.e. because we're doing these specific techniques, we're not being triggered anymore. And it goes, okay, I don't need that. That's not a threat anymore. We can let that go. That's kind of like, you might say, just some understanding for you. But ultimately, how do you become, and can you become free from OCD? And the answer is yes. And how do you do that? You do that by going directly to the nervous system, doing specific techniques which I teach that balance the nervous system. And when you balance the nervous system, you are sending a message to the nervous system that it's safe. So every time you have that specific fear response from the subconscious mind, it's gone into the flight and fight. But because we have regularly done something to reset our nervous system, the signals to alert us now of threat drops. Okay, and this is where it comes in, where yes, you can be free from OCD. It is a journey. It's a journey to first learn to reset the nervous system, i.e. bring down this flight and fight. It's no longer needed anymore. Yes, it was needed in the past. Maybe we needed to be alert. Maybe there was situations where we felt we were under threat. Brilliant. That's what it's designed to do. But now we don't need it. It's okay to let go. But words don't change it. It doesn't work by words. It works by emotion. So when we do that, when we do these specific techniques, what we're doing is we're resetting the nervous system to say it's safe I don't need to hold on to this. We can let this go. I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. So this flight and fight doesn't be activated all the time. And ultimately, that's where this thing called a chemical imbalance can come into play. So I don't know if you're on medication, you may have heard that OCD, I know for myself looking up different things from before an OCD, there's a chemical imbalance in the brain, da 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 da. Chemical imbalance means that we're producing an overactive amount of cortisol and adrenaline. That's what's a natural state of production. We're not supposed to produce this amount. So that's what a chemical balance means. When we take medication, we're suppressing some of that and open up different kind of receptors. But ultimately what we want to do is, in a natural form, is we want to reset the nervous system. So we're bringing down this overactive state of flight and fight into a balanced state, okay? So we start feeling more balanced. We start not having these automatic responses, triggers. But this is all automatic. We don't have to try and think our way there. We don't have to try and figure it out every day. We don't have to try and do all this stuff. We have to do a specific practice, specific breath work, specifically designed for OCD to reset the nervous system. And we also, in my program, I also bring in inner child. Very, very important to start to recondition, reprogram the parts of us, the child that may hold on to certain limiting beliefs. We all have them, certain programs, certain fears the child can hold. We need to let them know, the child, that they're safe, and that comes later on when we actually feel safe. It's very challenging to feel a sense of safety inside or tell ourselves we're safe when ultimately our body is not feeling safe and it's feeling anxious, and because we're driven by emotion. So I wanted to share that with you today because it's more understanding, and hopefully you'll be able to understand a little bit more about it for yourself, and also to let you know that I have an OCD program. It's a 12-week program, and then with the potential to stay on obviously after, that's fine. But within the 12-week there is bonus material after that will be about 6 months, would be the inner child stuff. The first 12 weeks is on specific breath called OCD breath that resets the nervous system. You would have a practice every day to do. So OCD doesn't just change by going to therapy once a week and hoping that it'll just go. We have to do something every day that's internal. So the breath is the natural way of shifting how we feel. It's nature's gift. It's us. It's within us to heal ourselves. We have the power. We just need to know how. Within that program, I have a community. It's not on Facebook because of the sensitive nature of OCD. I want to create something that's very private, because I do know obviously it's very sensitive, so it's not on any social media platform. We have a community people check into on a daily basis, for support, questions, etc. And then every Monday I do a live call to the group, and this is a Q&A, this is a check-in, this is a follow-up, making sure everyone's following the protocol. So you'd have a module every week, you practice that. You're starting out with about 5 minutes a day, and eventually you're going to be up to about 40 minutes a day in one sitting, but that's later on down the line. Ultimately what you're going to see is what's happening at the moment. So everyone wants relief, they want relief, they don't want these intrusive thoughts. Ultimately what we're going to change is anxiety, is fear. Fear response creates an anxiety emotion, it creates a flight and fight, okay? But we're going to change that. When we change that, we're no longer acting out the compulsions, okay? And then we're no longer having the thoughts. So once we reduce the anxiety, the thoughts also start dissipating, because what feeds one another? This is the thoughts, this is the anxiety, both feed each other. Okay, so once we reduce one, we also reduce the other, and that's how we can become free from OCD. And ultimately then we're alleviating the compulsions, but this is done organically. You don't have to try to resist, push. Yes, of course, it's not a miracle overnight. It's not going to fix anything. This is not fixing anything, we're actually healing. But this is not something that's going to happen overnight, but it happens in time. So when you'll notice that, the reactions, the feedback is like, the reactions to the thoughts, and they're not really sticking. Like, I don't feel this overwhelming, terrified feeling. And then they keep going, and then the thoughts start to dissipate as well. And then eventually they're there one day and I had the whole day and I actually didn't have intrusive thoughts. And that's when you know that, you found something for you, and you found something to change this forever. And you're always empowered because it's your breath. You never have to look outside yourself again, and that's the key. There's no problem going for therapy, go for support. I'm all for that. I regularly have different supports for myself for different things. I love all that. I think it's very important. But I also like to know what can I do on a daily basis for myself? What can I do to help myself? And that's where I'd like to be able to share these tools with you to know that that's available for you. So if you have any questions, please drop them below in the comments, or if you'd like to share anything about your own experience, if you'd like to know more about joining the community and the Free From OCD program, let me know. I hope you find that useful. I hope you take on this as a message of hope, as a message of inspiration, as a message of, I would say, empowering yourself, as a message of it's all within you to be able to know. It's all within you. We have all the gifts within us, just knowing how to utilize them, and to know that it's amazing how much we can rebalance and bring a sense of harmony back into our life when we go to the root of what we're holding on to and learn to change that in time. So I hope you all have a lovely day or evening or wherever you are, and thank you for listening. I hope to see you all again soon. Take care. Bye bye.